Have you ever wanted to make a tube quilt? Well, this is a great one to make. For years, I didn't think that tube quilts were something I wanted to make. Then I saw how quilters were making these triangular tube quilts, and I've decided to make one. I wanted to make one for a long time, but I finally decided to make one now. The fun thing about this quilt is I had 29 jelly rolls left of this fabric line. This is a feed sack reproduction line, and it's one of my favorite. This is the second quilt I've made. Now, I was hoping it would be a little bit bigger, but I only had so much fabric, and so this is what I ended up with. Now, this quilt measures 55 by 66 inches. It's kind of small. I typically like to make larger quilts, but I love this quilt. I think it is one of the coolest looking quilts I've ever made, and I think that this is a great option for scrap quilters. And you know, the triangle that you make, it can be used in so many different ways. I just stacked them on top of each other here, but you could put them together. You could put one row going up and one row going down. There's just so many options you can use this block for. This is just a really neat block. Now, I did not have a specialty ruler. I just used my regular ruler, and I am just so glad I made this tube quilt. Now, in the comments below, tell me if you've ever made this type of block before, or if you've made a tube quilt. Did you like it? Now, I liked the process. It was quick and easy, and I had this top whipped up in no time. So this is really probably one, if you had a couple of days to sew, you could probably make this top in a weekend, unless it got really, really big. Okay, and I'm going to step aside here so you can see this quilt. Such a cool quilt. Easy to do, great way to use your scraps or your leftover jelly roll strips. Now, the neat thing too is you can do this really with any size strip. Now, as long as the strips are under the width of your ruler. You might have to have a specialty ruler if you get if it gets very big. But you can definitely go smaller than 2.5 inch strips, because this was I used 2.5 inch strips, and you could definitely do this with smaller strips. I think it'd be a great way to use up some of your scraps. Okay, so let's get started, and I want to show you how this is done. I just wanted to start out showing you the jelly roll strips. Now, this is a leftover. These are just leftover pieces from a jelly roll I had. I didn't have a full jelly roll, but I've been wanting to use these for a project, so this project is working out nicely. Now, an important thing you want to do is be sure your strips are 2.5 inches. And if they're not, you need to trim them down. And this is an important step if you want your blocks to come out nicely. I also pre-starch these. Now, I'm not going to be pre-starching any other type of pre-cut, but you can pre-starch a jelly roll, because it's going to shrink in the from selvage to selvage, and not the 2.5 inch. And it didn't. It was okay if it shrunk in the width of the fabric. So I did pre-starch it. I pressed it all. So I just started pairing them up into two pieces that I thought would go good together. Now, this is a coordinated jelly roll, so they're all going to go good together, but I did want to pick those out. Now, once you have two picked out, you're simply going to put them together. You're going to put them together. You can pin them if you like. Some people don't like to pin. You can pin them together, and you're just going to sew down one side of the jelly roll. Once you've sewed down the side, you're going to have a strip that looks like this, and then you're just going to press it open. Once it's pressed open, it's going to look just like this. And you should now have a 4.5-inch strip. Now, you'll need to cut 4.5-inch background strips. And I have selected this white fabric with a little geometric, tiny little, I don't know, little geometric design in there. 2.5-inch sewn together strips, which should be 4.5 inches. And you're just going to take your 4.5 strip and line it up. Now again, you can pin this if you'd like. And then you're going to sew down one side. And then you're going to sew down the other side. Be sure right sides are together. And again, be sure your strips were 2.5 inches. Now, once you have your piece sewn together, it's going to look like this. You're going to have a seam here, you're going to have a seam here, the back's going to look like that, and I'm going to show you how you're going to cut these. Now I just use my shorter ruler, but you can use your longer ruler. All you have to do is use the 45-degree angle on your ruler. And it's so easy to cut these. So both sides have the seams. I've pressed it flat, and all you do is you line up the 45-degree line right along this bottom edge, not the seam, but the bottom edge. And you just make your cut. Then you slide it up, line it up with this edge up here and the point right there, and make your second cut. And you just keep doing that until you have all the pieces cut. Just sliding it up, lining it up with the edge, and cutting it. Sliding it back down, lining it up with that edge, and the point right there, and making your cut. And you're just going to keep doing this all the way to the end. And you don't want to get in a hurry. You want to take your time so you don't mess up. Now let's take a look at what we have. There are a few stitches here that you're just going to have to pull loose. And then you're going to have a unit that looks just like this. And it should measure 6 inches. Okay? You should have a unit that looks like that. And you should have a unit that looks like this. See how these are just opposites? Okay. And you're just going to continue to remove those few little stitches. Line up your blocks. And you should end up with 4 of each. Be sure you just gently remove that. Okay, so you should have 4 of each. Now, as you can see here, you will end up pairing them up just like that. Now, when I press these two, because this is going to be my block, this is what the block is going to look like. I want my seams to be going the other way, so I'm going to press some seams going down, and then on the other side I'm going to press them up. So I'm going to do that real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, so you can see these on this block, these seams are going towards the light. On this one, they're going towards the dark. Now, you can trim off these little dog ears. But you can see that's measuring to be a 6-inch block. Okay, just trim off those little dog ears there. You can see this one's measuring up to be 6 inches also. So I don't really even need to trim those. I'm just going to trim off these dog ears. Okay, so I'll be putting my block together just like that. These seams are going to just nest perfectly. Look how nice those nest. Now I did pre-starch this, so it's helping while working with the bias there. You do need to be careful because you do have some bias here on the edges. I'm going to pin this. And then I'm going to sew right across there, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I sewed right down the edge there, and then you can see how the block has turned out there. Now I'm going to wait to press this seam until I have the quilt ready to assemble. Okay, so you're going to be joining your blocks together like this in rows or columns, however you choose to do. And this is as easy as this is easy. This is all you've got. Now, again, I am waiting to press my seams because one row will be going to the left and one row will be going to the right so that they'll match up nicely and nest when you sew them together. You'll be wanting those to go in opposite directions. Now here I wanted to show you how I put everything up on my design wall and decided to position everything. I decided just to stack them on top of each other. I could have done one row going up and one row going down, but I really liked this layout the best. In this picture you can see how I sewed the columns into rows and then how I began sewing the rows into the quilt top. Now in the comments below, don't forget to tell me if you've made a tube quilt before, what did it look like, how'd you like it, and would you make another one? And until next time, have fun quilting.